Legends Without Applause presents a true wartime story almost no one was supposed to remember. A story where Britain's survival depended not on admirals or battleships, but on teenage girls with chalk. January 23, 1942, Liverpool, England. 19-year-old Janet Okell stands inside a requisition building, staring at a linoleum floor painted with a giant grid. Each square represents 1 nautical mile of the Atlantic Ocean. In her hand is a piece of white chalk. Around her, senior naval officers with decades at sea watch in open skepticism. They are about to learn something deeply uncomfortable: that a teenage girl with no sea experience understands submarine warfare better than they do. Captain Gilbert Roberts adjusts his collar. At 41, he should be commanding ships. Instead, tuberculosis invalided him ashore 4 years ago. Now he leads what many admirals quietly consider a bad joke: the Western Approaches Tactical Unit, a wargaming center where supposedly children play dames while Britain starves. But Roberts has noticed something the Admiralty refuses to confront: the numbers. In March 1941, 41 merchant ships were sunk. In June, 61. In November, 13 ships were lost from a single convoy. The trend is obvious and terrifying. Everything the Royal Navy believes about fighting submarines is wrong. What Janet Okell does not know, what none of the young women gathering in this room know, is that within 16 months they will help turn the Battle of the Atlantic. Admirals will travel to Liverpool just to be defeated by them in simulated combat. And by May 1943, the chalk marks they draw on this floor will force Admiral Karl Donitz to withdraw the entire German U-boat fleet in defeat. Years later, Winston Churchill will write, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." What he will not write is that teenage girls with stopwatches saved Britain from starvation. To understand why the Royal Navy needed saving from itself, you have to understand what was happening in the Atlantic in early 1942. German U-boats were not behaving the way British doctrine expected. They were not attacking submerged during daylight, carefully raising periscopes like the textbooks said they should. They were doing something considered impossible. At night, they attacked on the surface. They slipped into convoys from behind, weaving between merchant ships like wolves among sheep. At point-blank range, they fired torpedoes, then vanished into the darkness before escorts could react. By the time British commanders understood what was happening, 2 or 3 ships were already burning. This was the Wolfpack tactic. U-boats operated in groups of 8 to 20, coordinated by radio from Donitz's headquarters in France. One submarine found the convoy, the rest assembled ahead of its path. Then, under cover of darkness, they attacked from multiple directions at once. British convoy doctrine had been written for World War I. It assumed individual submarines attacking slowly during daylight. Escorts were trained for a threat that no longer existed. In January 1941, the Royal Navy had no answer. Senior officers expected time to assess, time to issue detailed orders, time for those orders to be acknowledged and carried out. The Germans gave them seconds. Lieutenant Commander Peter Gretton, who survived multiple Wolfpack attacks, later wrote, "Our doctrine assumed we would have time to think. Men died while we waited for permission to fight back." Roberts understood the problem because he had spent 4 years watching the Navy prepare for the wrong war. More ships, better sonar, better training, but no one questioned the assumptions underneath it all. So he proposed something radical: not conferences, not lectures, war games. Real simulations under time pressure with incomplete information, officers forced to make decisions quickly, then watch the consequences calculated in front of them. The Admiralty gave him a building, a small budget, and permission to try. What they did not give him were experienced officers. Everyone qualified was already at sea. Roberts needed people who could calculate intercept courses, sonar ranges, and moving targets under stress. So he recruited the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Wrens. Janet Okell joined in January 1942, privately educated, no combat experience, no naval background. She was asked to command imaginary destroyers at 19 against senior officers in simulated battles. Jean Laidlaw arrived from Scotland, trained as an accountant. She named the first major breakthrough Raspberry, partly as a joke, partly as a statement. Others followed: mathematical prodigies, team sport tacticians, even a future fashion model. Women chosen not for rank or tradition, but how their minds worked. Roberts's system was deliberately brutal. A grid painted on the floor, canvas screens blocking full visibility. Chalk marks moved and erased every 2-minute turn. No pauses, no rewinds. Make the wrong call, and a merchant ship vanished from the board, along with its food, fuel, and ammunition. When the first simulations were run, the result was horrifying. Every official Royal Navy doctrine made things worse. Standard procedure after torpedo strike took 8 to 12 minutes. In that time, multiple ships would be sunk and the submarines would escape. The Wrens discovered this not through theory, but by playing the enemy. They read German manuals. They asked, "If I were commanding a U-boat, what would I do?" Then they tested it, and they won, over and over. Jean Laidlaw's breakthrough, Raspberry, was painfully simple. At the first torpedo strike, any escort could act immediately. No permission, no waiting. Rockets fired, star shells lit the sky. Escorts converged instantly. The innovation was not technology, it was permission. Response times dropped from minutes to seconds. U-boats were caught on the surface, forced to dive early. Attacks collapsed. Before this doctrine could even be officially issued, it worked so well the Germans were forced to change their tactics. The final test came in November 1942. Admiral Max Horton, commander of Western approaches, visited Liverpool, a decorated submarine ace, known for blunt judgment. He personally commanded the escort force in a simulation. By lunchtime, the teenage girls had sunk him 5 times. After the 5th defeat, Horton stood up and said, "This works. I want every escort commander trained here." From that moment, Watteau reshaped the war. 5,000 officers from across the Allied navies passed through Liverpool. They left with a shared tactical language and one lesson burned in: act fast, act together, do not wait. By May 1943, German losses became catastrophic. Dönitz withdrew his U-boats from the Atlantic. The battle was effectively over. Radar mattered, aircraft mattered, weapons mattered, but none of them worked without the tactics developed on a linoleum floor by women the system dismissed. After the war, their work was classified, their names faded. They returned to civilian life unnoticed. Teenage girls who helped save a nation disappeared from history. That pattern is not accidental. Institutions reward conformity. Innovation threatens hierarchy, so the innovators are erased. Janet Okell commanded imaginary destroyers at 19 and vanished into obscurity. The Wrens of Watteau won the Battle of the Atlantic and received no applause. This is Legends Without Applause, because history's greatest victories are often won by history forgets.